I've seen you so many times as Kent Carnivore, so it's really nice to actually meet you and have a chat with somebody in the UK as well about carnivore and keto and quantum.
You bet, it's a real pleasure. You're a wealth of knowledge, so this should make for a really interesting episode. As far as I understand, you were originally a biochemist, so you showed a keen interest in biochemistry and genetics. You then got your PhD in biophysics, specifically pertaining to protein folding. And I believe that led you into the relationship between light, water, and biology. But I think most people associate you as a quantum biologist. So, what is quantum biology and how does it tie in so appropriately with meat centric ketogenic diets and carnivore diets?
So, with quantum biology, we can say in simple terms it's to do with the biophysics of biology. So, very importantly, light controls metabolism and biology. And I think, in terms of you want it to be focused on carnivore, the artificial blue light can raise blood sugar, which is something that sometimes comes up in the carnivore community. Also, the other part of quantum biology would be the role of water in how biology works. And a ketogenic diet, the mitochondria make more water. So that'll be a diet where carbohydrates and to some extent protein are lowered or restricted. Then the other aspects of quantum biology that's relevant to carnivore would be something called deuterium, which is an isotope of hydrogen. And then hydrogen is the basic building block of all other atoms, or we could just describe it. It's also like a nest of waves. So it ties in with quantum physics as well in how we would talk about biological systems. Then other aspects of quantum biology would be looking at magnetism and charge or redox. So I think if you wanted to tailor this for your audience, deuterium and water are a good subject for keto and carnivore. And also I am trained in medical ketogenic ways of eating, and we can discuss nutrition later.
How can we maximize and optimize the quality of our water? Because a lot of us talk about food a lot, but we don't talk a lot about the water that we're ingesting.
So just to start very basically, sort of practically for people, it would be just buying water in glass, because plastic is terrible for sort of hormones, and especially if it heats up. So what I do personally, I have a water distiller, and I don't have anything fancy. I just distill the water twice, then I remineralize it. We could talk a lot about different kinds of salts, but in the UK, I particularly like Celtic Grey. Baja Gold is fine, and I'm sure other people have their own favourite salt. Then what I would do is structure it. That would be putting it outside, because in terms of, you asked about quantum biology and energy and water, so it would be to create sort of the microgeometries in the water, and in simple terms, it would just be sort of more energy. And then there's a lot more that I could do in terms of magnetism or other things I could do to structure the water. Because I think when I start to talk to people who don't know anything about quantum biology, this idea of structuring water just seems stupid. But what all it is you're bringing water back to how you'd encounter it in nature. So naturally, water would be moving in nature. It's going to be moving about in, say, a riverbed that's got minerals in it and it's exposed to sunlight. When you buy water or it comes out of the tap, it's been very heavily sort of processed and pushed around in pipes, held still for a long time. So we would just say it's only something like 40% coherent, or has its sort of energy and life in it. And then people, they might want to think, oh, that's the most wooish thing I've ever heard, but I still will just go right to the beginning to say, okay, I don't mind if you think all of that's stupid about water vortexing or magnetizing water or light or crystals or putting affirmations in it. Fine, please, can you just distill it, because it's very dirty, and then can you please remineralize it? And that's where I'd go with people, because I think when we talk about carnivore or keto, as you rightly pointed out, food's just one aspect of it. And just because somebody's carnivore, it doesn't mean they're deeply spiritual or very religious. So they might be, oh, I'd never, I didn't realize what I did to my water, or doing this to it was actually a scientific phenomenon. So that's where I'd go with people and the drinking water. And say if you get stranded somewhere without water, just buy water in glass.
Okay, yeah, that's good advice, definitely. Yeah. So maybe you could get a little bit more into deuterium, because it's definitely not talked about enough. It's a big problem because we do need it, but it needs to be in the right amounts, in the right places at the right times, kind of thing, and not just coming in huge amounts. So what is it? Why is it a problem? And how can we go about minimizing it and depleting it?
Yeah, that's a great subject because I actually interviewed Gabor Shomoli for the third time today to talk about the link between deuterium and cancer. So, deuterium's an isotope of hydrogen, and it's not common on the planet. Hydrogen hugely dominates. And with deuterium, it's different to hydrogen because it's got a neutron in the nucleus as well. So it's double the size and it's got a different biophysical properties. So in terms of how does it function in the body, there's a particular ratio that we need to have between hydrogen and deuterium. It's sort of like a metabolic switch, which tells the cell whether it should kill itself or not. So if there's too much deuterium and not enough hydrogen, or too much deuterons or protons, or some people might say the D to H ratio, if that's too high, then the cell isn't going to kill itself when it should. And 30 years of research by Gabor Shomoli has shown this. Another problem that can happen with deuterium is because it's much bigger than hydrogen, in the mitochondria, in the ATPase, we'll just call it a little motor that rotates. If a hydrogen goes down, so this is very important for making ATP. So ATP isn't the main energy source, water is, but this proton needs to go down a particular size hole. So if deuterium goes down, it blocks it and it causes stalling in the motor. And over time, this is going to interrupt and damage the mitochondria. And then because the mitochondria provides the water and the energy for the cells, it's going to impact the cells and the organs. So overall, we can say that deuterium has been shown to be bad for mitochondria, and it also is implicated in cancer. And when it comes to chronic disease, we pretty much agree that 85% of them are due to dysfunctional mitochondria. The other thing that our mitochondria do is, if they're fed properly and not loads of processed foods and high deuterium foods, they'll make deuterium depleted water naturally, or metabolic water for us, which then gets structured inside the body. And this is all part of our water battery or water network communication. So in kind of simple terms, our mitochondria will make deuterium depleted water for us. So that just means water that's low in deuterium and is predominantly, we'll just say, hydrogen water for the moment. So it's kind of kept simple for people who've never heard of this before. So practically, people might think, well, how does that work? What do I actually do then? So first of all, processed food, because it's made in a factory, when hydrogen is used in different processes like hydrogenation, it's not fractionated for deuterium. So anything that's made in a factory, like processed food, we could list endless things. It's going to be high in deuterium. And also things like wheat, that's very high in deuterium as well. Again, found a lot in processed food. And also sugar or glucose, it has about 150 parts per million of deuterium, whereas things like fats, they're below 120. So a lot of the processed food, they do use hydrogenated fats. It's full of sugar and it's full of gluten or wheat. So it's quite easy to see, okay, that kind of food's going to have a lot of deuterium in it. The other thing is something like a seed oil, that's going to be even higher in deuterium than glucose. It can be sort of over 200 parts per million. So again, that's used a lot in processed food. When it comes to cancer and ketogenic diets and research into medical ketogenic diets, they've been around for over 100 years. And some people think, oh, it's just the ketones that's helping people. But also they've not really gone into the world of, well, maybe we depleted the deuterium and that's why the person got better from cancer or whatever different situation. There's so many now for ketogenic diets and carnivore, be it bipolar or diabetes or whatever. So that would be one of the important reasons, or another factor of how ketogenic diets are beneficial. It's just because they deplete deuterium. That sort of in a nutshell would be how food affects our deuterium levels. Also, of course, when we sweat and then go outside in the UV light, our bodies will naturally deplete deuterium. So again, exercise, sunlight, saunas and things like that can be helpful for depleting deuterium as well. But because the food we eat, it ends up as electrons and protons inside the mitochondria, that if we eat high deuterium food, it's going to go into the mitochondria. We do have a checkpoint, like it's called the TCA cycle or tricarboxylic acid cycle, so that can check. That's why it's so long. The TCA cycle is a huge number of steps. So it can check, or is there a deuterium coming in, or I'll clip that off. But like anything, like a conveyor belt in a factory, or anything, if you overload something, even if we've got checkpoints in place, still deuterium is going to get through into the mitochondria and block up and break the ATPase. So there's numerous reasons of why deuterium is harmful. Also because deuterium's bigger and different, and it's got a different dielectric constant, different magnetic moment. If it goes in place of a hydrogen in, say, a hormone or something like melatonin or testosterone, or into cholesterol, which we need to make all of our sex hormones, it looks different to the body. And also it just means things are going to react slower, like the chemical reactions in the body are going to be slower if deuterium's there, just because it's bigger. So it's just harder to pull it off, and perform the chemical reaction. So we can just view deuterium as something that just slows the body down. And there's many different sort of pathways, and it's called deuteronomics, that the study of deuterium, if people have never heard of this before. And just to reiterate, it's an isotope of hydrogen, so it's not radioactive, but it's something that is definitely harmful to biology in excess. And you pointed out something really important, that in the right amount, it's useful, because it's important for as a growth factor. So it's different for children or small organisms. Seeds have got lots of deuterium in them because it's the food for the baby plant. And then in our bodies, because of deuterium's different structures, it tends to get concentrated into the connective tissues. And this has been studied not just in humans, but also in birds, heavy land animals. The deuterium is concentrated in the collagen in the tendons. So that's why buying collagen powders or supplements, they're something else that's going to be a high deuterium food, just because you've concentrated all of this collagen into it's very unnatural. You've taken away lots of the other useful sort of, there's not just collagen, there's elastin, all sorts of other interesting things that people could eat, and you've processed it in a factory. And then that's why things like collagen supplements from heavy land animals are going to be something like sometimes 300 parts per million deuterium. And then in terms of what's a healthy deuterium, anything below 135 in a person, because you can measure your deuterium. Anything over 150 is very unhealthy. And then ideally in ourselves, we want our deuterium to be overall in a test, like saliva or breath, to be below 135. I just want to say there's nothing wrong with oxtail soup or beef cheek or, natural forms of cooking, because sometimes what happens is just because something like collagen from oxtail soup or ox cheek or pig's trotters or whatever, there's all different collagenous dishes and slow cooked meats all over the world. That's great. But as soon as you start concentrating stuff, making things in factories, thinking, oh yeah, more collagen that's very dry, it's all dried up as well when you buy it as the collagen powder. And naturally in our bodies, collagen has to be hydrated and wet to function. So it's completely different to the collagen that you'd find in oxtail soup. And all of these other very delicious sort of slow cooked meats.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear the oxtail soup isn't a bad thing, because I enjoy that, especially during the winter time,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do as well. Oxtail soup, because I'm predominantly raw animal based, but oxtail soup and beef cheek are the two things which tempt me. Pig's trotters seem to have disappeared off the face of the earth in the UK for the moment. My dad used to really like making kind of collagenous dishes out of those.
Yeah. Maybe you could take us through how the body goes about creating metabolic water. Is it a combination of light exposure, electrons, and consuming fats and things like that?
Oh, okay. So what happens in the electron transport chain? We say if we ate food, after processes like breaking it down in the stomach, transporting it, we have things called beta oxidation, which is a pathway for fats, and then glycolysis, which is breaking down glucose. And there's lots and lots of steps because biochemistry is complicated. Then we get to the TCA cycle, which I mentioned before. It's like a wheel. We can just imagine it as like a wheel of reactions that's going to feed electrons and protons into the mitochondria. Then we've got the four complexes in the mitochondria. So this is not something that is unfamiliar to people, because I think we would call it A levels in the UK. Most people might have an idea about a mitochondria, an electron transport chain, and oxidative phosphorylation. So we've got these four proteins in the mitochondria. Then the fifth one is the ATPase that makes the ATP. So the electrons go down the electron transport chain, and the closer that they are together, the better. It's the more efficient flow. So that's sort of a good example of healthy mitochondria. When it gets to complex 4, we can think, okay, well, electron plus a proton plus some oxygen in a particular ratio is going to make water. So that's how the whole cycle of respiration and food that we eat, in a nutshell. How does food become water? That would be the most simple way I could explain it. The way light plays a role is light is so important for setting our circadian rhythm and our timing, and telling all of our cells what time it is, be it the gut or the liver, or telling the genes what time it is, telling the mitochondria what time it is. So in order to metabolize properly, because I've made it like really simple, there's a lot more that happens in the mitochondria. So as a crux, so first of all, we need them to make energy for us. So if our body clocks are all over the place because we're not seeing sunrise, we're exposed to artificial light all the time, we're not getting natural signals from the sun, everything else in the body is a bit like a chaotic airport. It doesn't really know what time it is, and then the body's confused. Should we be making energy? Should we be making hormones? Should we be sleeping? Should we be producing free radicals for defense? All sorts of things. Another way we can think about the body clock and the light and the mitochondria going out of sync, we can just say it creates chaos in the body. And as I said at the beginning, sort of another term for inflammation at the biophysical level would be just chaos.
So I often go on about this on my channel, that we should be eating local, seasonal, and ripe. Do you think that it's fair to say that one of the biggest benefits of going carnivore, especially if you're eating locally, is that you're eating things that are growing around you and not sort of these exotic fruits, etc., coming from different parts of the globe?
David Bohm said that matter is sort of frozen light. So we can think about food and light frequencies, or food being light. And then we have our light environment around us, which we'd say sunlight is the most natural and best source of light that we can get, not artificial light. So in very simple terms, it just means that if we chose, say, fruit and vegetables that were grown in the same sort of locality as we live ourselves, the quantum coherence of that is much better. And in terms of physics, coherence can also be sort of described as neg entropy, which is order, and then disordered information, say coming from food, we can just say is inflammation. And then if you bring a banana, which does hold sort of light signals in it because it grew outside, and then eat it, it's going to create a sort of really chaotic or confusing signal, just because biology works on predictions. It doesn't like surprises, and it wasn't expecting the banana. So on level of sort of frequency and matching the frequency, it would make sense of how the banana would be like bringing an electric guitar to play with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. It's not necessarily there's something wrong with the banana per se. I wouldn't eat them just because of the tooth decay, but I'm not picking on the banana. I'm just saying it's the wrong place to have the banana if they don't grow there. Same as it would be, there's nothing wrong with electric guitars. You just don't mix them in with with an orchestra. And you probably know Dr. Darko Valchek as well, because he also talks a lot about the frequency of food, and we've talked together. I've talked to Darko about meat and carnivore and things like this. So people who follow the carnivore sort of world have probably heard of Dr. Darko, and he talks about this as well, but in probably a different way.
You're talking about these sort of quantum tags, if you like, that the light where that food was grown, it kind of puts in the food. And then this is like an electromagnetic barcode of information that we go about trying to process and understand, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a brilliant analogy. Yeah, that's just as good. I think it's like it's a light barcode that matches your postcode, and then
Right.
if it doesn't match your body, which you try and put the information in, then it has a big tantrum. So yeah, that's another way to describe it. So
Mhm.
there's lots of different ways to go about this. But I think also sometimes when people want to argue with me about the local and seasonal, when it comes to just being part of a community, it makes much more sense to buy your fruit and vegetables if you eat those because there's less sort of travel miles. Then local and seasonal produce, you can go and see what the apple orchard looks like and what's being sprayed on it. So I just think there's like multiple reasons of why local and seasonal makes sense on different levels, be it quantum physics levels or glyphosate levels or even just how old is the food, because I can go and pick an apple and it's super fresh, whereas if you ship it out over from another country, it could be like 6 months old, who knows.
You've talked about sunrise and how important that is for setting up our sleep wake cycle, circadian biology, etc. Sending signals, we're receiving signals, I guess, from this natural spectrum of light to make and release certain hormones at the right times, which is going to help with all of that. What about meal timing? What is your opinion in terms of when we should stop eating? Is it quite important to finish eating before the sun sets?
Oh yeah, ideally yes, because there's so many different camps who, whether they know about quantum or not. But first of all, biology is pretty slow and it needs time to wind down. So the guts and the pancreas and things like that, they don't just instantly go to sleep. They need to not be stimulated by food and digestion in order for them to well, like just go to sleep. And then in terms of food and the way the gut behaves, it is inherently inflammatory for the gut to try and digest food. Also, in terms of just natural circadian biology, if we eat something, well, food's a timekeeper or a zeitgeber. So, light and temperature are sort of more sort of or light, particularly. That's the primary driver of biological timing, like a light and dark cycle. But food's important as well. So eating late is sort of another way to tell your body it's daytime when it's actually time to go to sleep. Also, in terms of leptin and insulin, if people eat too close to bedtime, that there can be an insulin rise, because insulin can still rise on diets that don't have carbohydrates, depending on the protein. That can block the leptin receptor, and leptin is a really important circadian hormone because it reports on how much and what's your energy status in your body. It's like an energy accountant. So if leptin's broken or not functioning, the body can't see fat cells, so people can have dysfunctional leptin, lots of body fat, but biochemically or electromagnetically the system thinks that they're starving. So that's why leptin is really important, and people have known for a long time that eating too late towards bed can disrupt leptin signaling. But then on the converse, obviously seeing the sunrise and getting plenty of ultraviolet light, that's also an important part of the leptin melanocortin pathway. But in terms of going to sleep, it's just sort of common sense that you don't want to eat after sunset or too much after it. I mean, sometimes in the UK the sun sets at like 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a trickier one. So I usually say within 5 hours of bed, but there are a lot of people, and me included. Sometimes I'll just have 2 meals a day, and I'll just leave out the evening one. So there are all different reasons, like a quantum biology reason to do with leptin of why eating late is not a good idea, but then just common sense. And then also there are people who've eaten too much and then gone to bed and tried to sleep. It's very uncomfortable. So again, it just does come back to common sense. And then from the circadian perspective, like I said, food's a timekeeper. So if your bedtime is, say, 10 o'clock and you eat like food at 9 o'clock, you're basically telling your body, oh, it's daytime again. So there's lots of reasons from that perspective as well.
Yeah. So tell us about your food habits. What do you eat mostly, and timing, meals, etc. Do you cook your food? Do you eat mostly raw? Well, you've actually said that you eat mostly raw. And in terms of lifestyle, I know people call them hacks. I would just call them, backing off of this progress and getting back to what we should be doing, kind of thing. But tell us about your lifestyle, what you implement for your health.
Okay, so I eat raw animal based, and I've done it for a very long time. But there was a few things I was frightened of, which was chicken and poultry. So I even and my friend Jones Hussein, he was the one that helped me with the chicken and the pork worry. But I do that most of the time, and also I'll fish as well. Like oysters come raw anyway, and clams and
Mhm.
salmon is. I don't go crazy with salmon just because it's kind of expensive to get the wild salmon. People outside of the UK won't know what Morrison's is, but they sell really good fresh mackerel, and they actually do have a really good fish counter. So that's what I predominantly do. Then I do have apple trees in my garden, like my backyard, if people are American listeners. So I do eat those in the summer. Obviously, not all of my apples, and I do pick. We've got a huge amount of blackberries here, because they're pretty fresh. As a favor to a friend recently, I really into CGMs, or continuous glucose monitors. As people probably have heard of, there's a great big hoo-ha about the sugar diet. So I completely understand the Randall cycle, and I can see logically, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So they said, "Oh, please, will you just do it and wear a CGM?" And see what happens. So that's the one time where I have deviated, just being completely honest to your listeners. So I did it for 2 weeks. And I didn't eat any sort of weird things. I stuck to the Randall cycle and the 30 grams of fat a day. Yes, I did lose some fat, but I just didn't feel right. And my CGM, my blood sugar, mine is never horrific, but it was definitely it was up more than sort of 4.5, sort of 5.1 that I like. It was kind of around the sixes all the time, and that's sort of about 110 in the American units.
Yeah,
So I
okay,
can
yeah.
say with that, my skin's normally fine, as in, but I really noticed, oh, my skin's dry, and no matter how much tallow or whatever I put on it, it just wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So that's the one time when I have of late completely deviated from what I would normally eat. And I was excited. I wanted to try it. I was curious. And like people who follow Bart Kay will have heard all about the Randall cycle. And I didn't feel right. And then as soon as I went back to my raw meat and the things that people disapprove of or thinks weird, I just felt myself again. So I'm not for 1 minute saying, oh, everybody has to be raw carnivore, but I think it's something that there's lots of fish and stuff that people do eat raw anyway, just
Mm.
naturally for their culture. Steak tartare is really popular in Europe, and that sort of raw beef. I totally understand why people would be terrified of raw pork or raw chicken, but you can get things like pheasant and partridge and things like that here. So in terms of like the food, very occasionally, I try not to have dairy, but I do see huge value. It's a personal thing in raw butter. I got really into that when I went to El Salvador. So sometimes I'll have raw cheese. I used to really like dark chocolate. I did give it up about a year and a half ago, so it occasionally slips in. But then Dr. Darko, when we did an interview, really hammered home about the polyphenols, and he just said, "Look, Sarah, no, this is my area." So I think that's what I do with food. I go for it. I always see the sunrise. I just have to do it.
Yeah.
Even if I want to lie in, somehow my body will make me get up. So I always see the sunrise. Go for a walk in the morning. When I get back, I have breakfast. I do have coffee in the morning, but is something that I keep giving up, and then it sneaks back in again. If I was to do fasting or miss a meal, it'll be dinner time. And then sometimes I do fast, especially if I have to travel, especially to somewhere like America or El Salvador, I'll do something like a 2 or 3 day fast, just because it sort of dysregulates my blood sugar. So that's what I'd probably give as a hack is, if you have to do long distance traveling for certain fast, or if you can't do that, to do keto, but keep it clean, and keep out the inflammatory things which still sneak in as keto.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else. I'm very much into spirituality. I think this is a whole other planet, or talk about other aspects of quantum biology, about the ether and manifestation and manifesting, or whatever you imagine becomes your reality. That was because I worked as a hypnotist for quite a long time. So I definitely incorporate spiritual practices, because like food, it seems that no matter what anybody is, there's something wrong with it. So I think for people, they have to find their own interpretation of what spirituality is and practice whatever resonates with them or their ancestors, then I do like movement. I do sometimes exercise in the gym under blue light, but I take a little portable near infrared panel with me, or the gym's very kind and it kind of opens the doors for us.
Right.
So that's why I think it's multifaceted. Like movement matters, mindset matters, food matters, light matters hugely, water hugely, charge, redox very important, magnetism, yes, very important, and then things like ether and sort of that side of physics I think is very important as well. So sort of in a nutshell, that's what I do. And one more tip, I'm very much into darkness as well, and I have to have my room pitch black, and I am, as best as I can, careful with artificial blue light and phone use in the evening. Not being nanny-ish to people. If I do have to stay on the computer a bit later than I would normally, or I happen to get sucked into something on, like usually talking to a friend on WhatsApp, and it's, it gets too close to bedtime, because I like to have sort of like 3 hours, if I can, away from screens. I mean, it's very difficult to say times because in the UK the light changes, but every time I disobey the rules of sort of light in the evening, I always get crap sleep. So it's one of these things that it's like people like me, and if I deviate for too long from my raw carnivore, I just feel crap. So it's not me being disciplined, it's just there are other people who's the same. They'll think, oh yeah, I'd love to go out and have a beer with some mates, and they do, and they just feel crap. So it's not like I've got good willpower, it's just I feel bad. If I do let the blue light and the screens in to the bedroom, or if I deviate for too long from my my raw carnivore, which I do sometimes cook things, like I did say, the oxtail soup. Even me couldn't eat that raw.
I've tried as well. I've tried. It's just not possible, is it? Trying to think
Oh
what
no, I
else I
think
tried to eat the other day. Is it? Oh, actually, I was going to ask you. Do you eat? Because I eat a lot of raw fish. I eat mackerel and salmon and things like that.
yeah.
I can't really do much with the skin. I mean, you almost have to heat that, and then that just becomes like easy to eat.
Oh yeah, I don't eat the skin of the fishes, because my mentor for who's a medical ketogenic diet, Beth Supek-Kania, really told me off, like, for eating the skin,
Right.
because she said if it's going to collect any contaminants or heavy metals, I know we're not even going to go in there down that route of methyl mercury and things inside proteins, but just in common sense, that if there's going to be something nasty, it's going to be in the fish skin. So she used to really tell me off about the salmon skins, because I used to love putting salmon skins in the air fryer, and she just went so crazy. So yeah, I just like leave the skin, although I know there's kind of benefits from the skin of, say, a sardine or sardine bones, but yeah, I don't know, the whole fish skin and scales, I think that's probably very fish and water dependent, but I kind of don't have the skin of the salmon
Right.
anymore.
Okay. Well, I don't feel
And
so
the
bad then.
mackerel, I just open the mackerel, and then scoop the bits, the mackerel flesh out.
Yeah.
Although I have to say I do really like smoked mackerel, but then it's been cooked, and then there's the histamine thing, which I don't want to
Yeah.
bring up, just because it's like people say, oh yeah, my parachute didn't open because of the histamines, or we've had a thunderstorm. I do completely acknowledge it when it's serious, but I don't want to kind of give food phobias to people, because
Yeah.
there's plenty of people that are fine with sort of smoked or fermented foods.
Yeah.
So yes.
For sure. Incredible. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I would love to ask you plenty more. Maybe we could do this again sometime.
Oh yes, I'd love that. Yes, I've been
Yeah.
really excited to meet you, and yeah, definitely, I'd love to do it again, because I think it's something that being mostly carnivore, and then also quantum, and I have done it a long time, I can sort of bring things to the table, but also, like
100%.
everything, I don't know everything for certain. So it's always really interesting to see how a podcast pans out, and then what do the listeners think. So I'm really so happy that you invited me, because I've wanted to know who you are for so long.
I'm
Yeah.
just a window cleaner, Sarah. I'm just a window cleaner in Kent who set up a channel one day because
Really?
I had such incredible results. Yeah, that's me. So yeah, I've had brilliant results, and I just want to spread the word about diet, and that's kind of opened up new doors. I think it's a a natural trend on this way of eating, you kind of start to question, you know, your toothpaste and why am I
Oh,
still
yeah.
spraying under my arms and why am I still using this and that? And you start, you know, just wearing better clothes and not washing all the time, and all of these products, you start to just get rid of all of this stuff out your cupboard drawers and everything. And it's like, wow, really, really simple, really minimalistic, and really effective.
Oh, no, I couldn't
Mm.
agree with you more. Like, there's aluminium in, like, some toothpaste, and 100% about the plastics and the men's and women's hormones. But, yeah, that's even better for your do you still do window cleaning? Because I mean, you've got plenty of opportunity to spread the word in person, and also it's really good because it's outdoors.
Exactly. Yeah, I look at it differently now. I'm quite happy the fact that I can get out in the morning, see morning light. I'm moving. I've got, you know, natural light in my eyes and my skin, vitamin D. Like, you just feel better. I'm breathing in fresh air. I'm surrounded by, you know, vegetation. I'm talking to people, which is mostly good. I have to be careful because I speak to a lot of old people that have got problems. They're on medications. I feel like I can help them, but you don't want to sort of push buttons and say things where it's not necessary. I have upset one person, and I've kind of learnt from that. It wasn't necessarily like I was being forceful, but I just brought up a subject that was a bit touchy with that individual, and I upset that person. And so, you know, just got to be careful.
Oh, no, I've done that as well. Sometimes you will have to hold back because you so badly want to help, and then it turns into by accidentally lecturing them, and then there's lots of stuff you didn't realize. And yeah, I know what you mean. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's no,
Awkward.
it's really interesting to meet different people. I never would have. No, I'm not going to say anything. Just in case, you know, that's just so brilliant. If you're a window cleaner, that's kind of really that's so important because I think sometimes there are certain people in certain professions that if you explained it to them, they'd take it better from you than me coming along and explaining to them. Although luckily I have had a lot of experience working with the general public. So, you know, I love it even more when sort of somebody from an unexpected background gets into this. So yes.
Yeah. I've had some, yeah, I've had
Brilliant.
some really interesting conversations, but then there are the people that are kind of always appealing to authority. They're certainly not going to take advice from their window cleaner, who they assume probably isn't that intelligent. So, you know,
Oh,
everybody's
well,
different.
yeah, I know there's all sorts I can say because in terms of your hosting, the questions and knowledge that you had is like up there. So people that think window cleaners are stupid are completely have really got the wrong idea for certain. But anyway,
I
thank
think
you, Lee. It's been like so fun to talk to you.
you too. Absolute pleasure. Cheers.
Thanks.